Alrighty, everybody, and it is 1 o'clock, so I will go ahead and say good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us for NAW's first webinar of 2023, How to Own Your Industry with a Marketplace. My name is Marley Whittle, and I have the pleasure of serving as your co-host today, along with our guest, Ryan Lee, founder and CEO of Nautical Commerce. For those of you who may not know, NAW is the only national trade association representing the $8.2 trillion distribution industry. And throughout the year, NAW hosts webinars with our partners focusing on issues important to the wholesale distribution industry. Today's webinar, before I get started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items to help you participate in today's webinar. Today's webinar is being recorded, and we will make this recording available as soon as possible after the event. And you can submit your questions by typing them into the Q&A box on Zoom throughout the webinar. We've reserved the last 10 minutes to answer questions from the audience with Brian. So with that, further ado, Brian, I will let you take us off and kick things to you.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm going to start sharing. Are you guys able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yes, so one of the key questions we get from distributors and wholesalers is, we see people in the industry going out and launching marketplaces. This is typically a conversation I have with folks in the industry. And their first question is, how do I do this, right? There are going to be trailblazers, and the trailblazers that embrace this new wave of digitization are going to be in a position to own their industry. And the best way to do that is obviously with a very thoughtful approach, and that's what we're going to be covering today. So a couple of things we're going to talk about is why a marketplace. Why does it make sense? The second part is how do we get started, and then lastly is really kind of talking about what resources are available to make you more successful. So one is why launch a marketplace, and I like to say that in marketplaces there's really two personas. You're either a seller on a marketplace or you're an operator. If you're a seller, you're a passenger. If you're an operator of a marketplace and you're creating other sellers, you're a driver. Now, there's a distinct possibility you could be both, and there's nothing wrong with being both. But you really kind of need to think about what persona you are and want to be as you kind of consider a marketplace and your business model. But before we kind of dive into that, a real quick anchoring into why this is interesting. Marketplaces, in my mind, mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. You have what I consider the analog marketplace model, which is the distributor, broker, and wholesale model. You guys were marketplaces before marketplaces were made cool by Silicon Valley and the media, because at the end of the day, you aggregate up suppliers and manufacturers, and you make that available to your buyers. Whether it's wholesale buyers or procurement buyers, it doesn't really matter. And some of your processes may be digitized, they may not be, and it doesn't really matter. You're fundamentally a marketplace. The difference is, how much are you digitizing that? It's interesting because, what we call now bona fide marketplaces, which are digitally enabled marketplaces, they're doing about $56 billion a year in GMV. And what we're hearing is 88% of these distributors buy from one or more marketplaces. And that's very interesting because we all have kind of like that buyer's perspective, but we don't really kind of have that what I call under the waterline, which is really what happens behind the scenes. And lastly, this B2B e-commerce industry is about a $19 trillion opportunity for you to capitalize on. And so if you really kind of think about it, what is a B2B marketplace? Well, almost all B2B commerce is multi-vendor. And so I say that any marketplace really is a function of B2B commerce, especially in B2B world. So why is it important? Well, if you think about this B2B commerce, it's growing fast. Not only from the effects of the pandemic, where everybody really needed to embrace a digital model, but you're also seeing the growth within the year, right? A lot of B2B organizations grew their e-commerce acceptance all within the tail end of the pandemic, right? You've got February to November, it increased as a channel by 10%, and what decreased was the in-person stuff and the phone call and email. Really, what I like to say this is it's really digitizing the transactional aspect of commerce, and it's reinforcing that relational aspect. They're still leveraging distributors, wholesalers, and brokers as the experts that help guide the buyer through the journey to effectively fulfill what their projects are. Generally, it's a project, or it's a commercial initiative. And the value of the distributor, and the value of the broker, and the value of the wholesaler doesn't go away. As a matter of fact, in a digitally assisted sales model, it just increases the throughput of getting the product and order into the system. It's also interesting because, like we said, this is very organic to your current business model. You're already a marketplace. You connect buyers to sellers. You connect buyers to suppliers. And you, as the intermediary, are really important, because at the end of the day, if the buyer wanted to go direct to the manufacturer, you wouldn't be there. They can't, because the manufacturer doesn't necessarily, or the suppliers don't necessarily know how to deal with the end buyers. And so I do think there's a misnomer that some people think that manufacturers are going to try to go direct to consumer or direct to the procurement teams. But what they're missing is that expertise, really understanding the customer. And so, that's critically important. And this kind of leads to that next point, is this buyer's expectations really have changed. They want that consultative sale. They want the expertise, but they want the throughput of, once that decision's made, to operate a little bit more like a B2C. And this is a function of, what I call the quickening of commerce, especially during the pandemic. Commerce in generally went from, I think, a 15%, across the world, especially in the US, 15% of all sales were online, to greater than 35% within a quarter. And that quickening really opened the market to a lot more buyers that just weren't online at all. So how do you get started? This is one of the most challenging aspects of it. In my mind, when running any kind of project, the key to success is break it into smaller steps. In my mind, you've got to do this in a phased approach. It's interesting because it might sound intuitive, yet I see tons of projects where people come in and they have this grand vision, which is amazing. That's awesome. But what they attempt to do is they attempt to make step number one that grand vision, and that can take many years, double-digit millions of dollars, and a technology team, all before validating that this is the right business, or at least the right business model to weave into the fabric of how you operate. And so, what we like to say is, you really need to optimize for time to value. This is not only going to increase the probability that your project's successful, but it's also going to make your CFO very happy, because what it allows you to do is chunk it up into stages so that you can validate that model quickly and effectively demonstrate a very fast return on investment. And so I'll give you an example, a very real world example. We launched a B2B marketplace, and what we typically do is we try to set it up in 3 different stages. So we like to call it concept, pilot, and production. Now, what is a concept phase? Concept could be something that actually doesn't go out to customers, or it could be digitizing a portion of order management that doesn't involve the buyer at all. It's effectively done by internal folks. With this particular marketplace, we advocated for a 30, 60, 90-day cadence. So in the first 30 days, we wanted to have some kind of proof of concept together so that we could not only show customers and buyers, but also suppliers that we wanted to curate for our marketplace. But in addition to that, we wanted to run transactions. And so we did so, right? And we were able to demonstrate not only to the customers that this was real and that we were able to do it fast, but and when I say we, I'm talking about my customer that ultimately did this. But we also went on site to meet with their customers to kind of see how they were looking at the problem and see what the how it resonated with them as we presented it. The interesting part is once we got to the 60-day mark, we were actually running a significant volume of transactions through there. And so there was a real ROI. There was revenue coming through the platform. And in that 30-day meeting, when we sat down with that customer, the customer committed to buying from the marketplace if we could make it a reality within the first 90 days. And so we by the next stage, it was 60 days, we'd really kind of started pushing transactions through. And then 90 days, in my mind, is all about reinforcing. Why chunk it up? Well, the best reason for doing that's the second bullet here. It's an approach that de-risks the unknowns. It's great to have a grand vision, and it's great to kind of get everybody aligned to going there. The challenge is you're generally managing many people that are involved in the project, and they don't have crystal clear clarity on how to get there in an appropriate way. There's a lot of assumptions get made. And so the best reason, or at least in my mind, the most salient reason to do this is it allows you to learn quickly. So you try something in the first 30 days, you're going to learn what worked, what didn't work. And in the 60 days, you stop doing what didn't work, or you reinforce it by doing something slightly different. And test the model again in the 60-day mark, and then in the 90-day. And again, these three phases can be broken up into what works for your organization. Look, if you can't mobilize within 30, 60, 90, and it needs to be 90, 180, and 365, that's fine as well. But the key there is try to shorten that feedback cycle as quickly as possible, because that accelerates your learning and allows you to implement things in a risk mitigated way, as opposed to finding out 2 years from now that you made a bad decision a year earlier. And then lastly is really this concept of ensuring that the technology providers you work with have an appropriate technology model, right? That aligns with how you monetize, what you won't allow, whether it's a take rate on that, or being a part of the transaction, or actually harvesting your suppliers and being able to use that as their own property. And then lastly is this concept of making sure that the tech is built to evolve with your needs. I think we've all been a part of these digital projects where we implement it, and then 3 to 5 years down the road, we look back and go, we need to change it out, because it's not going to evolve with the way the world is expecting us to do our business. So resources for success. Any digital transformation is really a part of 3 key things: people, process, and technology. Technology alone is never going to help you. You need to make sure that you have the right people, and you have the process owners bought in to the vision around the digital transformation. I would argue they're equal parts, but process ownership is probably where these kinds of projects fall off the rails. I've heard time and time again, especially in large organizations, where we meet with the process owners, and it's the same refrain. I support this project, but whatever you do, you can't change my process. Well, there's a challenge there, right? Generally the CFO or the project owner selected this project because your processes were built around your current systems. They weren't built around what the process should look like, right? And so, you want to get buy-in from these process owners that they're flexible to experimenting on the new processes. And again, it's not that they would switch immediately. You run them in parallel, especially during the concept and pilot phase, so that that way you can get buy-in that the outcome, the output of that process is the exact same, but it may be more streamlined than their current work. And of course, as long as the technology stack supports you, it's a good marriage there. But always approach it from a people, process, and technology perspective. Now, the way we do it is, we've looked at it as a B2B commerce platform that effectively is designed to evolve with your needs. And when we built our platform, what we really asked ourselves is, what are the most pressing concerns for distributors and for wholesalers, right? One is, effectively giving you the ability to grow your catalog without effectively incurring inventory risk, right? And so, this is things like the drop shipping capabilities. This is things like allowing an order to get pushed into your downstream supplier or seller systems. The second part was, it's interesting because if you look at the biggest of the big, these organizations that have successfully disrupted industries, I'll pick on the elephant in the room, right? If you kind of think about Amazon, how is Amazon different from Sears? As a kid, I used to order out a catalog day in, day out. I'd circle it during Christmas, and my grandmother would go out, she'd call Sears. And the interesting part is Sears suppliers would actually ship that to me. They were actually a marketplace before Amazon even existed. The difference was, Amazon's or Sears' infrastructure was tech debt, meaning that they were not able to monetize it. And so as their margins compressed, they had this beast of a technology infrastructure that they had to constantly feed capital to keep it compliant, secure, and running. And it just became more and more expensive. The genius of Amazon was not that they built this marketplace that kind of took over the world. It was that they productized their infrastructure and made it available to everybody else as AWS. So all of the AWS customers are subsidizing, Amazon's internal infrastructure. And so, if you kind of think about that parallel, what we want to do is we want to enable our customers to become a platform for others to use and for you to monetize, because otherwise your technology is dead. Your technology is liability. It's a cost center. We want to help you turn that into a revenue center so that other people can draft off the great work you've done, whether that is logistics as a service, whether that is offering storefront capabilities and order management. There's a variety of things that you can do to tweak those monetization levers, or add advertising within the platform itself. The fastest growing advertiser in the world right now is Amazon. You'd think it'd be Google, you'd think it'd be Facebook, you'd think it'd be Microsoft with Bing, but it isn't. It's actually Amazon and these marketplaces that are embedding advertising services within their platform. The last one is really the concept of this marketplace and unified brand management. A lot of distributors and wholesalers end up acquiring a bunch of brands, and you end up with a lot of downstream systems. And the idea, that we wanted to espouse to our customers is that, you don't necessarily have to collapse those into your existing ERP. Instead, plug that ERP directly into something like Nautical and expose it in a unified way because it is multi-brand, and allow your customers to discover that catalog in a way that doesn't require a 3 to 5 year project to collapse all of these systems as you acquire customers, and so, or not customers, but other competitors. So it's really an acquisition engine to make it easy for you. And lastly, what we did was we effectively built a platform where we embrace your current infrastructure, we help you extend it, and it becomes a platform that you can innovate on. And the key thing here is we've done it in a way that's built to evolve with your business. The worst thing that I think can happen is you become a hostage to your tech stack. What we want to do is make sure that it was flexible so that it could evolve with the business needs. So with that, I'll stop. I want to see if there's any questions out there and see how I can help answer any kind of questions you may have about, a marketplace business model, digital transformations, acquisition accelerators.
Hi, Ryan. Thank you so much for that. So a reminder, guys, that you can submit questions using the Q&A function. And it looks like we do have one coming in. Does it make sense to sell through a marketplace or become one?
This is a great question. This is the passenger versus driver. You know, look, I think participating in a marketplace is actually an amazing idea. Now, you may think that that's going to disintermediate or erode at your margins. However, think about it as marketing. So when you market, you put money into Google or Facebook or, you know, let's just say Microsoft Bing. To me, that's top of funnel. You're pouring money in so you can get people into your stack to get them to bottom of funnel, but you have to nurture it to get it to bottom of funnel. When you're in a marketplace and you have to pay 10% toll or 5%, whatever the take rate is for that marketplace, you're getting a buyer who's in the bottom of the funnel. They already have buyer's intent. And so, you know, just think about it as CAC, customer acquisition cost. Are you paying at the top of the funnel, which you don't know what the conversion rate is ultimately, or you have someone who's in buyer's intent? This will also inform how you should launch your own marketplace. You get to understand a little bit of the sausage making behind the scenes on how they're interacting with you as a seller. And you should absolutely document that and figure out, you know, what they're doing great, what they're not doing great, and how you can do it better. And I think that's how you convert from being a passenger to a driver. That's a great question. This next one is, if I start one, how do I convince suppliers to join? It's interesting because the people ask, what is a marketplace operator's job? Their job is to aggregate demand. And if you aggregate demand, the suppliers will come. And so you know, for us, you know, what we tell you know, new marketplace operators is go out and curate a list of maybe 5 or 10 suppliers that you can add. They're generally early adopters, they're innovators, and have them join first and really make it high concentration as opposed to try to cast a wide net and get a ton of suppliers, right? And you can even focus on a vertical or a specialty within your own organization. The other part is that, you know, you don't necessarily have to start with physical products. You could do services, right? A lot of you offer products that require professional installation. Why not go out and aggregate up all the talent that can actually install that? And you become a referrer to their customers, you know, effectively a B2B2C marketplace that's more of the service providers. So there's a variety of ways that you can do that. And I'd be happy to, if you feel free to reach out to me, I'll give you my email after this. We can actually talk about that more in depth. I see another question here. It is, are there any off-the-shelf marketplace softwares that are worthwhile, or would a driver be better off starting from scratch after doing research as a passenger? So Nautical is a marketplace platform. We are B2B commerce and marketplace. So what that means is we offer first-party commerce and third-party commerce. The difference is you don't have to add an app and you don't have to add any kind of additional stuff out there to enable third parties easily. We can also connect into existing commerce systems. So you don't necessarily have to replace what you currently have. So my thing is, and again, if we get an opportunity to chat, I'll explain to you why you should not build the plumbing, which is what Nautical built. Every single marketplace operates the exact same. That plumbing doesn't change. It is a very heavy lift to build it. Took us 2 to 3 years. You don't want to spend 2 to 3 years building something that's a commodity. You should spend your time, your energy, and your technical resources on creating a differentiated buying experience and a differentiated delivery experience. That's where a marketplace differentiates. They do not differentiate by the infrastructure, the stuff that everybody does rinse and repeat. Curious about how to deal with messy product data. So this is a great question. It's interesting because you know, Amazon still doesn't have this down. As a matter of fact, I found a product on Amazon the other day where all of the all of the HTML tags were in the description in Amazon. So even Amazon has this problem. So you can control this by having a curated list of suppliers, because to your point, the real underlying message here for this question is you have a brand promise to your buyers, and messy data looks sloppy. It diminishes the quality of the brand promise that you've made to your buyers. And so again, when you curate suppliers, this is how you ensure that you get better product data, because you can communicate with them. You can also do data cleansing, because you're not dealing with millions of products. You're dealing with thousands of products or hundreds of products. And the goal always is productize that ingestion, so that you can optimize for throughput. And eventually, and again, marketplace is a journey. It's not a destination. You start with e-commerce, you introduce a couple of suppliers, maybe that's drop shipping, maybe that's a little bit more full-fledged seller and supplier management. But you don't go out and try to get 10,000 suppliers day one. Otherwise, to your point, you will have absolutely a mess of product data. The other thing you can do is you can embrace what we call a master product catalog, which is what Amazon does, and Grainger and other marketplaces. What the master product catalog does is you curate all the product data so that your buyer sees a unified, tailored and consistent way to look at the data, and then you let your suppliers sell one of those items. And if a product doesn't exist, it goes into a queue, and then you and your operating team would go in and curate that data to make it look and feel and have the quality, both in imagery, specs, the descriptions are aligned with the way your buyers expect to see that, and then list that product after the fact. There's a little bit of overhead in that, but that ensures a higher quality catalog. And of course, there are AI tools and there are data cleansing services that exist out there, but there's no silver bullet. You are ultimately responsible for making sure your quality is there to match the brand promise of what your customers expect.
That's great. And I think those are the questions, and I know that we have a couple minutes left. Are there any kind of, final thoughts or anything else you wanted to leave the audience with?
Yeah, for me, these digital transformation journeys can be a bit daunting, and they can be challenging. I've had success in, like I said, breaking it down into small deliverables that aren't super capital intensive, so that first of all, you can get the project in, you can test the model, see if it works with your organization, your industry, how you operate, as well as what your customers and your buyers are going to think. But the key there is just don't boil the ocean. It's great to have a vision and it's great to drive towards one. But the key is that keep the project deliverable within a year, at least in the first phase. And second phase and third phase can always span multiple iterations, but the key is learn as fast as possible. That's what the most successful organizations do, is they de-risk it by making sure the deliverables are very short cycles, and you show some economic value as quick as possible. And that economic value can be revenue, it can be mitigating capital expense, and accelerating learnings.
That's great. Thank you so much, Brian. We are pretty much, I think, 1:30 on the dot.
So I'll give everybody my email, just in case they want to reach out directly. But feel free to reach out if you want some guidance on marketplaces, you want to explore nautical commerce, or you want to talk about B2B payments and fintech stuff. I'm a little bit of a fintech geek, so feel free to reach out.
Great, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. Please reach out to Ryan, and I want to say a special thank you to Ryan and Nautical Commerce for being our partner for this webinar, our first of 2023. And be sure to check out future webinars and events on NAW's page on our website. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you all at our next webinar. Thank you again, Ryan.
Thank you. Have a great day.